you can see the headlights are off the car again. Um, my friend Ian, who the lights came from, actually came to visit, and he has a very good eye for detail and knows Austins very well. So he had some ideas about how I could reposition the lights uh, just to be more correct and to make the car look better. So he sent me some pictures. He'd actually sent me these earlier and I'd forgotten that I had them. I had to go hunting for them, of Austin pattern headlight brackets. Um, of course, I used these same pictures when I made the support stays. So what I did is made up a couple of cardboard templates. Started off very rough just to get some idea of the shape and the angles, and then slowly refine that, and then made up an actual metal bracket just from some thin aluminium, just so I could actually sit this on the car and get an idea of angles and where the bends needed to be to put the lights where I wanted them. What we're doing basically is I had the lights quite far forward, bringing them back. That does cause a problem with the bonnet. I mentioned in the last film about the back of the lamps having to clear the bonnet, and I had to put mine quite far forwards, and that's because I put the hinge line, the side hinge line, which is this one, too far down. It needs to be quite close to this bend. So what I've actually done is I've gone back to the original bonnet I made, and some people might remember when I made this wrong. This bottom panel needs to actually be rectangular, and I made this line on an angle, which isn't really correct. It works, but it's not right. So I ended up making a second bonnet, which is that one over there. These take quite a bit of effort to make. They're not difficult, it's just a lot of work because the hinge is integral to the panel, so you've got all these little folds and things you have to individually trim out and then bend up and get all of that nice, and it's just a lot of playing around. So what I can actually do is on this bonnet, the second one I made, the problem is this fold is too far down. The good thing is it's far enough down that I've got enough material there that I can actually just trim this off and remake this part of the hinge further up. I'll then have to make new bottom panels for it because obviously these will be now too short. In the meantime, I went back to my original bonnet because the hinge line on that one is further up. So when it lifts up, there should hopefully be clearance for the back of the lamp. I'm going to have to see how that goes. I've gone ahead and made new brackets anyway to position the lamps where I want them, and then I'll have to adjust the bonnet to suit. But the new hinges, this was the first bracket I made, and really it's just to get something on the car. A lot of the time I find I can't get things right first time. I have to actually do something to get things on the car where they need to be so I can see how I can do it better or do it properly the second time. So this was the first attempt. It would have worked, but I can do better. These are the new Austin pattern ones I've made. So these are made from 5mm thick steel. So these will be nice and solid, and they're made from one piece, so there's no welds to vibrate and crack. Bending this is a bit tricky to get nice tight bends. What I ended up doing is using my little vice bending machine here. It's just a sort of V shape and a little blade, and as you wind the vice in, it just pushes on the steel and bends it. This is only really for light gauge steel, so aluminium maybe up to 2, maybe 3mm thick steel. So 5mm is a bit too much for it. So what I did is dug out my gas torch and my barbecue LPG bottle and just heated these up until they were red hot. This is where my new pliers came in handy for being able to grip these, because they're parallel jaw. You can grip things really well and they won't twist or slip. and then heat these up red hot, put them in here, and then this can bend them easily while they're hot. For the larger bend, this bottom one, I actually had to heat it and bend it a couple of times to get that to go all the way, because it loses so much heat as soon as you clamp it into the bender. The top one I was able to just do in one go. So these have been bent, cleaned up, sanded, and then sandblasted just to get the scale off them, and they're just covered in some anti-rust stuff. I haven't painted them or anything yet. You can see I missed a bit there. So I'll bolt these on the car and see how they look. I have the lamps mounted on the car now with the new brackets, and I think it looks a lot better. The headlights aren't so far forward, the lamps, and when I made the new brackets, I was very careful to make sure I got them both at the same height. So I only bent the bottom fold first. I bent this, and I didn't bend the top one, but then I let these cool down, bolted them onto the car, and then actually measured from the ground up to a fixed height on the brackets, and marked each one at exactly the right height, and then bent them at that point. It turns out they actually ended up identical, which means I do have the height on both sides of the car pretty symmetrical. So you can see the lamps are further back. This does mean that now I couldn't put a bar across. A few people have mentioned that. I didn't really want to do that anyway because I don't like the look of them. But these brackets, being this much thicker steel, these are far more solid. These aren't going to vibrate around now. I think they'll be fine. If there is any sort of problem with those vibrating, I can always put little stiffening gussets on them, but I think actually now the vibration isn't in the headlamp and the bracket, it's actually in the cow horns all the way down here. Some of this still isn't tight, and you can see there's a bit of movement there if I put actually a lot of force on it, but I think that's a lot better. And I think the height is about right as well. I still need to drill a hole in the guard to poke the cable through, so there'll just be a hole back down here somewhere that this can tuck down and through. I can't do that until I take these guards off, because I can't get the right angle for the drill unless I come at it from the bottom, but then I have to take the wheels off. It's just a bit of a pain. When Ian was here, the other thing we talked about was changing the shape of the guards, just how I could maybe improve them. One suggestion was bringing the curve around a bit tighter on the nose here. I have them a bit flat, so they don't quite follow the tyres. So they may look better if this was tighter around here, and possibly changing the angle and the curve at the back there to make that less of a kink, more of a gentle curve. But to do those, it would take a lot of modification of these guards. So I think for now I'm going to leave them how they are. I know they could look better, but I don't think they look terrible. And they'll be good enough to get the car on the road. And instead of hacking these around, because to change this front shape I could sort of cut bits out and weld new bits in, I'd rather make a whole new set of guards and do it better the next time round. The other thing I would look at doing is making it as one piece. So instead of these two pieces being bolted together, I could make it as one piece, and this has a sort of welded seam down here, which would be a lot neater. Again, the way they're done this way is because I didn't know how to make all of this as one piece before I started. I've not seen one. I don't have one to copy because this is a unique car. So the only way I can do it, because I don't have the experience or the skills, is to do it piece by piece. So first I made these, and that took me a couple of goes. And then once I had these on the car, I knew what the shape of that hole was, to make, if that makes sense, and then it was easy enough to make a panel to fit. I say easy, it's still a bit of fiddling, because you have to put joggles on the edges and get the bends right and get this wide edge with a nice curve on it. But now, like I keep saying, once I've done it once, I've got an example, even if it's not a good example, it's enough of an example for me to know what to do better next time. Same with making a bonnet. I could make another bonnet. I may still do that, or else just modify that one. The other thing I need to do is attach that catch. It's these are the little bonnet catches. Having one in the middle is perfectly okay, and a lot of Austins were like that anyway, so that works fine. But again, I can't attach these at the moment because I can't get in there to drill the holes. Either the engine's in the way on the inside or the guard's in the way on the outside. So I will have to take these guards off, and that's when I'll finish tidying them up, drill the hole for the cable to go through, and then I can drill the hole for these little mounting bonnet catches. The back of the car is done apart from figuring out the strap that's going to hold the boot lid on. We did play with it a little bit and thought, well, maybe I could make a hinge that fits in there somehow. It would be fiddly, I think, because this is all curved surfaces. I'd have to think about that, how the geometry of the hinge would work. But this is quite a deep bonnet, boot lid for this sort of car. When people make Ulster replicas, the thing's just a hatch just wide enough to fit a tyre through. They're very, very narrow. I didn't want that. I wanted something I can actually use, and I don't carry a spare tyre anyway. So I made it quite a bit bigger. So I need to finish that off. The lights are working. I'm waiting for the LED bulbs to arrive. The headlights should be working with the new brackets. Let's just see. So that's the side lights. That's the headlights. So I just need the bonnet catches. I may need a rear vision mirror, but I don't actually need a windscreen to get it registered, get it back on the road. Turn this off again. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm starting to look at how I actually get this road legal and get it re-registered on the road in New Zealand. So that's my main aim now, is just to get enough done so I can do that. I don't need it painted. I may just get some black etch primer to do all of the guards when I take them off. I'll probably take them off, hammer them up a little bit more, just make them a bit cleaner, but I'm not going to try and completely finish them. That'll happen when it goes for final paint. But I want them to be neat and tidy. I'll etch prime them black because that's the colour they're going to be on the car when it's finished. And it'll give me a much better look of what the car is going to actually look like. At the moment, I'm going through the process of getting what's called a VIC card, which is a vehicle identity card through the Vintage Car Club, which I'm a member of in New Zealand. And that's a card that basically it's from the Vintage Car Club, and it says, yes, this is a 1937 Austin 7. It's all 1937 Austin 7 running gear. It's all period correct, built the correct way with the correct parts. There's nothing too modified, that kind of thing. And that'll really help when I go to get the car through its inspection and get it registered for the road. And we have a special class of car. So there's a class period, special period recreation. I can't remember what the exact terminology is for it. But basically, it's exactly for cars like this that have been made with original parts from the period, with a new body, built period correct, with period materials and the way they would have done it back then. So hopefully it's not going to be too hard to get this back on the road. That'll be the next job.